inventory, you're still going to get different formats that you need to make sure that you're managing. As an example, an iPhone has a different security profile and different capabilities than securing an Android device. So it is a very wide open terrain, and also is probably the most widely categorized, because you can put laptops next to tablets, next to smartphones. At the end of the day, why I think this, reason number one, the digitization of all critical information. If you looked at this 10 years ago, most of this information in one form or another was in the migration element of becoming digital or becoming a file or becoming bits of data, but now it is standard operating protocol for all information that's entered, managed, and touched in any form or another be available on a spreadsheet, be available via a web-based tool like Salesforce. It's all available in a digital format, which means it's very manageable, sendable, transportable, and copyable. Two, the remote access to critical corporate information is available everywhere. As I just mentioned, Salesforce, email attachments, applications like Dropbox. All of these type applications allow for access off the network so that we have a much more productive workforce, and it's there for a positive reason. But obviously, this causes a huge element of creating mobility, or mobile security as being probably the biggest gap in your corporation today. Number three, there's so many devices with different access, different security solutions, or not even a true security solution available as of yet. And a new one seems to be coming on board every 30 days or so. So if you really take a look at it, the definition of mobile security is so broad that it encapsulates so many different types of devices that it is hard to wrestle down and define to one thing. And the last reason are the non-corporate owned devices that are accessing corporate data. Personal tablets, personal smartphones, home computers, and people having access via home computers are all elements that create this huge mobility nightmare from a security perspective. And there's some things that, while displeasing as they might be to our employees, are not necessarily we're trying to accommodate, while we're also trying to provide a secure atmosphere for our corporate data. And at the end of the day, one of those is going to have to win, because being able to do both is very challenging. But at the end of the day, the one true vector, the true threat that we see in this is that regardless of your mobile security solution and whatever your policies are, the biggest challenge is the insider threat, meaning your employees. They're the people that are using these mobile devices. They can come in the form of malicious insiders, as well as poorly trained or ignorant insiders. And for the most part, that latter, that poorly trained or ignorant insider, is a very big threat to your organization. It's very easy, not only in a mobility world, but in a true content management world, that attaching the wrong files, misplacing things like laptop computers, these are all elements of what I would call a poorly trained or ignorant insider. But certainly the malicious insider is a huge threat as well. And these mobile devices make it much easier for them to hijack data and take it with them, which we'll go through in a moment. Here's some supporting data, which is extremely interesting. Business travelers lose more than 12,000 laptops per week in U.S. airports. This report is actually more than a year old, so that number is probably greater. 12,000 laptops per week in U.S. airports. It's incredible, and it's challenging enough as it is. There's security checkpoints that make you get down to the point of disrobing, let alone trying to make sure that you're remembering your shoes. You also have to remember your case and your laptop, which you had to take out separately, and most of the time you're rushing to get to an airplane. But 12,000 laptops per week are lost. 59% of employees who leave or are asked to leave a company are stealing company data. This is from a survey done of exiting employees across the United States. 59% of the people that were surveyed did admit to taking company data. So you can imagine that number is actually probably north of that 59%. And 65% of business travelers admit that they do not take steps to protect or secure the information contained on their laptop. So you take a look at just those three core pieces of data, and you should be very, very scared. You can imagine that even the unintentional incidents with 12,000 laptops sitting around in airports that are potentially lost with critical corporate data sitting on them is scary enough alone. Then think about the fact that almost 60% of the employees who leave your organization are stealing company data. And then the fact that our employees as business travelers admit they're not taking steps to secure any information on their own devices. So stolen and lost laptops. Laptops are responsible for the majority of data loss and required data breach disclosure events in the past 10 years. This is a huge statistic because, as you just saw in the page before, 12,000 of these laptops are lost in major airports every single week. So you can imagine that we've all heard stories. I think there was one involving a government agency where somebody had misplaced the laptop. These are all incidents because these laptops carry around an incredible amount of storage. They're basically a computer walking around with a large hard drive that can store a great deal of information. So it's a mobile device that has remote access, but just as importantly, it is an extremely large hard drive which has an incredible amount of user accessible data even if they're off network, and that causes this to be one of the biggest security threats in your mobile security solution. Only 33% of laptops within lost and found departments in airports are reclaimed. If you think about that for a minute, that means out of 10 laptops lost in airports, more than 6 are never recovered. So they're just lost to the world. People don't even know where they are. They never even go back to find them. They're just sitting there in some warehouse waiting to be reclaimed. And quite oftentimes, as you can imagine, with 12,000 laptops being lost in airports every single week, that there's a good portion of those that are corporate laptops that have never truly been found. So at the end of the day, I see the largest mobility security challenge being remote access and large storage capacity of the laptops. The laptops just, the mere fact that they can plug into our networks from a remote basis and have an incredible amount of storage are possibly the biggest threat. And some just very, very simple rules to follow. At a minimum, your security solution for laptops should be able to geo-locate and track laptops. This isn't rocket science. This is available today in the marketplace from providers. You should be able to track those laptops. If you hear from an employee that they can't find their laptop, you should be able to find that on your own. Or, just as importantly, employees have been known also to misplace laptops that maybe they didn't actually misplace. Maybe they still own. If you can track that laptop, you can see its usage, you can see its last location, and you can make sure that you can look retroactively at information on it. You should be able to remotely view actions taken by the user. So as an example, if the laptop is stolen, you should be able to see if the user is able to access files. Maybe they weren't even able to get past the password screen, and they were stuck with that. But you should be able to see what was accessed, see what actions were taken on that laptop. And there's a number of providers that can provide those solutions. But you want to know what happened to that information while it was not in control of your employee and or your company. And then lastly, when you find out that your laptop is stolen, as an example, or potentially missing, one of the best preventative things you can do is remotely wipe and or lock down the missing laptop. If you don't do that, that information, even if you can track it and trying to go locate it, can still be accessed. And one of the best things you can be able to do is to lock that laptop down or completely wipe it from a remote location, which is available from many providers today. The other threat, and keep in mind, we can talk about specific mobility solutions for every individual service, but at the end of the day, I'm really focusing on the element of the true sense of security. We can have a theoretical discussion about many elements of the mobility devices themselves, but at the end of the day, if you're not having a lockdown secure environment, all the theories in the world don't help. So I'm trying to focus on the actual security threats as much as possible in a mobile world. The data theft by remote users. So while smartphones and tablets require what I would call their own solutions, typically individual to each device, BlackBerry is different than Android, which is different than iPhone. And most of the data that is stolen goes out via USB and CD/DVD drives. If it's not a hard copy of some document, it's basically via one of those types of devices, which is an interesting element. Keep in mind that remote laptop users have easy and full-time access to those types of ports and tools, as well as access to email and attached files. And email and attached files are really what we're talking about when we talk about smartphones and tablets for the most part. They're easily forwardable, passable, and pushable to any place they want to go. And just as a note, we can all sit here and talk about encryption as much as we want, but mobile device encryption does not stop an insider. And if you go back to my earlier quote, where almost 60% of employees exiting a company are stealing some form of data, you can talk about as much encryption as you want, but employees aren't really affected by the encryption that they need to pass through to get to their own data. So it's not really protecting your data at the end of the day. So malicious employee solutions. There are some great solutions out there, but employees must be restricted to corporate-issued mobile devices for access. If you aren't doing this and you want to accommodate your employees, I know there's a CEO out there who really wants an iPhone, but if you don't have a security solution for it, you should make sure it's not on the network. You can wipe an iPhone, you can do lots of things, but you want to make sure that you have these devices within your control and within your domain. If it ends up being their own device that you're letting them utilize for it, you have no access to it for the most part. It is, there are some legal questions going on currently about what you can access data-wise and how they can use it and what actions you can take against them. But for the most part, if it's not a corporate-issued device, it's creating a bigger problem from a security perspective. There's no perfect policy, and we have to admit this. There is absolutely no perfect mobile security policy, and I say this only because for every defense we create, there is some type of threat that finds a new way around it, and that's the history of security, IT security, as it stands today. Something that is critical is having an effective monitoring solution. We can lock the doors in our house, we can lock the windows in our house, in our office. But putting cameras up is a great way to do it. You might think you have your office completely locked down with all the locks and magnetic code keys and everything else, but we put cameras up because, you know what, you need to monitor to know exactly what's going on and so that you can understand what's happening. And so, in a sense, from an IT security perspective, you need to make sure that you have an effective monitoring solution that's a critical part of your mobile security policy, meaning you might need to look at things retroactively after an incident to understand what happened. As an example, when we talked about the laptops, being able to see what actions were taken while your laptop was out of your employee's custody would be critical, or while it's missing. You can go, you might not know until Tuesday that it's missing, but you can go back Monday and Sunday and find out what kind of access or what was done on that laptop. Similarly, you can see the actions that an employee took in terms of forwarding email, where that email went, and other solutions. And as I mentioned earlier, because of the transport of information through USB drives and DVD and CD drives, a DLP solution for locking down ports for laptops, it's just critical to make sure that it's not typically listed under the mobile security solutions, but when you look at what we're talking about a remote employee workforce and solutions to address that, a DLP solution is really, really important in making sure that you have the ability to manage that, or at least provide a security protocol for laptops that are off your network is a big piece. Now, this all might sound kind of pie in the sky, but in truth, there are many solutions out there that can provide these solutions to you so that you can manage them properly for your company and your network. And that's why we've taken a look at many solutions. One of those solutions, and certainly the reason I'm here today, is the InterGuard solution. I say this because it meets the profile of what I've outlined previously, and it provides all of these general solutions, and we can go through them in a minute, in a very simple-to-use interface, a common interface, and a web-based interface. So the InterGuard solution, at the end of the day, is a cloud-based solution. It requires no hardware. You all know the benefits of that. It eliminates maintenance headaches and certainly the upgrade headaches that take away staff time and everything else. And it's very simple to add and delete new users and block sites. It's basically, at the core, is a great monitoring solution. But at the end of the day, it's easy to use and easy to install. And one of the biggest challenges I find in the IT world is some things sound great on paper, some things actually might even be great once you take that box and put it into your own network rack. But in truth, there's always a bunch of headaches with upgrades, conflicts, everything else. I found that the InterGuard solution, from a philosophy of making it a cloud-based solution, has some distinct benefits that really actually, not necessarily intentionally, but definitely cover the remote employee and certainly the mobility world. So as an example, they have a product called the Laptop Cop, which remotely retrieves important files invisibly using any internet connection from a laptop. So it can actually pull files off of a laptop if they're critical. It can also remotely delete files or an entire hard drive and it can secure and confirm deletion to the highest Pentagon standard of unrecoverability, which is a very hard word to say, by the way. But what I found very powerful is that because it has the ability to be cloud-based, you actually have, in a sense, an interface to that laptop, which is a critical element when you think about a stolen laptop, or certainly recovery.